All right, I don't know if I'm going to post this video or not, but I made a video just like a day or two ago about manifesting. And I mentioned this lecture that I listened to by Neville Goddard. This is the lecture right here. It currently has, from 12 years ago, 1.5 million views. So, people have listened to it. I've listened to over a dozen different lectures by Neville Goddard since 2019. When I heard this, I was almost certain that my entire life was going to change. I believed that I had found the secret to life, but I couldn't tell anybody because you're not supposed to tell anyone. I shared this a little bit a couple times after like a couple years when nothing happened. I decided I wanted to see what other people think of it, but nobody commented. So I don't know. But this has been 6 years now. And like I say, I've listened to over a dozen of his lectures. I've listened to this lecture maybe a dozen times, trying to understand why I couldn't get it to work. I even asked God and or the universe to show me proof that this really does work, because I wasn't sure if it was going to work, because I was like, why isn't nothing's changing? And so I just asked, can you show me proof? Can I have some proof that this really is going to work? Because if I could just have a sign, give me a sign, okay? So let me show you one thing. Literally after asking for a sign to show me proof that this really is going to work for me, the very next day, this video was in my feed. The Hidden Code for Transforming Dreams into Reality by Morrissey. Let me show you the thumbnail so you see what it looks like. I'm not going to play this one. This one's 18 minutes long. All right. This has 2 million views from 8 years ago. It's a TED Talk. This is the most incredible TED Talk I've ever heard. Let me just show you. There is the thumbnail. So you see what it looks like. That's Mary. I messaged her after listening to this. I found her YouTube channel and I said, I watched it, blah, blah, blah. Do you know who Neville Goddard is? And she replied back with one word, yes. She does know who Neville Goddard is. Listen to this video and explain to me how that woman right there is alive. If this is a hoax, she's a master at it. She had zero chance to live. She was given about 6 months to live when she was a teenager. I think it was a teenager. Zero chance to live. And when I listened to it, I said, okay, I'm convinced. I now know this works. I have no doubt in my mind that this works. And yet this lecture that he gave still didn't bring about the results that I was certain it was going to be. And people said, well, you have to believe. I said, I did. And they're like, well, no, you clearly didn't. You doubted. I said, after months went by and nothing happened. Yeah, I started to doubt after months went by and nothing happened. So listen to that, Ted. Listen to this one first, okay? Well, yeah, I'm not even going to play it. Listen to this, see what you think, and then listen to this. Say if it's really true, if it's not true, how do you explain this woman's life? How do you explain that this woman's still alive? Because I can't. And she's still alive to this day, I believe. I think she's still alive. So I'm not going to play it. There's no reason. I'll just play you the intro. I want you to hear what his voice sounds like. It's a very interesting voice. He's a very well-spoken man. It's very old, 1955.
The purpose of this record is to show you how to use your imagination to achieve your every desire. Most men are totally unaware of the creative power of imagination and invariably bow before the dictates of facts and accept life on the basis of the world without. But when you discover this creative power within yourself, you will boldly assert the supremacy of imagination and put all things in subjection to it. When the man speaks of God in man, he is totally unaware that this power called God in man is man's imagination. This is the creative power in man. There is nothing under heaven that is not plastic as potter's clay to the touch of the shaping spirit of imagination. Once a man said to me, "You know, Neville, I love to listen to you talk about imagination. But as I do so, I invariably touch the chair with my fingers and push my feet into the rug just to keep my sense of the reality and the profundity of things."
You know what? I am just going to play this. I want you all to hear this because this is a very, very impressive lecture. And I really want to know what your thoughts are after listening to this. And then go listen to Mary Morrissey's TED Talk. Please. I'm asking you to listen to this woman's TED Talk. The first half is kind of but you got to listen to it. The second half is where my mind got blown. Because like I said, I literally said, can you show me proof? Jim Carrey, when he was a kid, asked the universe to give him a bicycle. He got a bicycle. He couldn't believe it. No one knew he asked. It was a real... Jim Carrey talks about that too. That's nothing compared to what Mary Morrissey says. But Jim Carrey said, I'm proof that you can ask. Because I asked. And the universe gave him a bicycle when he was a kid. It's a great story too. You can look that one up. But listen to the rest of this. I'm just going to play it. If you don't want to listen to it, don't bother. Just stop the video and go on. But I'm just going to play this thing because I want everybody to hear this. Everybody who's interested.
Well, undoubtedly he is still touching the chair with his fingers and pushing his feet into the rug. But now let me tell you another one who didn't touch with her fingers and didn't push that foot of hers onto the board of the streetcar.
He really does have a nice voice.
It's the story of a young girl.
I like his voice.
Just turned 17. It was Christmas Eve, and she is sad of heart. For that year, she had lost her father in an accident, and she's returning home to what seemed to be an empty house. She was untrained to do anything, so got herself a job as a waitress. This night is quite late, Christmas Eve. It's raining. The car is full of laughing boys and girls home for their Christmas vacation. And she couldn't conceal the tears. Luckily for her, as I said, it was raining. So she stuck her face into the heavens to mingle her tears with the rain. And then holding the rail of the streetcar, this is what she did. She said, "This is not rain, but this is spray from the ocean. And this is not the salt of tears that I taste, but this is the salt of the sea in the wind. And this is not San Diego. This is a ship, and I'm coming into the Bay of Samoa." And there she felt the reality of all that she had imagined. Then came the end of the journey, and all are out. 10 days later, this girl received a letter from a firm in Chicago saying that her aunt, several years before, when she sailed for Europe, deposited with them $3,000 with instructions that if she did not return to America, this money should be paid to her niece. They had just received information of the aunt's death and were now acting upon her instructions. 1 month later, this girl sailed for Samoa. As she came into the bay, it was late that night, and there was salt of the sea in the wind. It wasn't raining, but there was spray in the air, and she actually felt what she felt 1 month before, only this time she had realized her objective. Now this whole record is technique. I want to show you today how to put your wonderful imagination right into the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and let it remain there and fall asleep in that state. And I promise you from my own experience, you will realize the state in which you sleep if you could actually feel yourself right into the situation of your fulfilled desire and continue therein until you fall asleep. As you feel yourself right into it, remain in it until you give it all the tones of reality, until you give it all the sensory vividness of reality. As you do it, in that state, quietly fall into sleep. And in a way you will never know, you could never consciously devise the means that would be employed, you will find yourself moving across a series of events, leading you towards the objective realization of this state.
So according to Neville, this is all you have to do. And if you do this just once, it's guaranteed to happen. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to try anything. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to dwell on it. If you fall asleep in your imagined state of the thing you want, it's guaranteed to happen. Just like that girl in her tears imagined vividly, and it happened, and she wasn't even asleep. So I'm going to keep going. I could just stop it, but you know what? It doesn't matter. You don't have to listen to the whole thing if you don't want to. So I'll just keep going here. But his voice is really infectious to listen to. He does have quite a voice, I have to say. And he has a great look about him too. There's no doubt.
Now here is a practical technique. The first thing you do, you must know exactly what you want in this world.
Done.
When you know exactly what you want,
Easy.
make as lifelike a representation as possible.
I did that.
Of what you would see, and what you would touch.
I did that.
And what you would do, and physically moving in such a state.
I did all that.
For example,
Totally.
suppose I wanted a home, but I had no money. But I still know what I want. Without taking anything into consideration, I would make as lifelike a representation of the home that I would like, with all the things in it that I would want. And then, this night, as I would go to bed, I would, in a drowsy, sleepy state, the state that borders upon sleep.
I just want to interject right here, even though I'm not supposed to talk about it. I'm going to. I can tell you every room of my dream home, and I can describe everything in it. I drew it out. I not only drew it out, I imagined being in every room with certain people that I want to be with and taking them around a tour of this home. I've sat in chairs. I've sat on couches. I've gone out into my backyard. I've swam in my pool. Everything in my imagination intently as I could, as real as I could. I can describe everything. I have the whole thing drawn out. I don't anymore because I don't need to. I have it all memorized. But it's crazy. I've lived in my dream home for years.
I would imagine that I am actually in such a house. Then were I to step off the bed, I would step upon the floor of that house.
I did that.
Were I to leave this room, I would enter the room that is adjacent to my imagined room in that house.
I did that.
And while I am touching the furniture and feeling it to be solidly real,
I did that.
and while I am moving from one room to the other in my imaginary house,
Yep.
I would go sound asleep in that state.
That's hard.
And I know that in a way I could not consciously devise, I would realize my house. I have seen it work time and time again. If I wanted promotion in my business, I would ask myself what additional responsibilities would be mine were I to be given this great promotion. What would I do? What would I say? What would I see? How would I act? And then in my imagination, I would begin to see and touch and do and act as I would outwardly see and touch and act were I in that position. If I now desired the mate of my life, were I now in search of some wonderful girl or some wonderful man, what would I actually find myself doing that would imply that I have found my state? For instance, suppose now I was a lady. One thing I would definitely do, I would wear a wedding ring. I would take my imaginary hands, and I would feel the ring that I would imagine to be there.
I did this.
And I would keep on feeling it until it seemed to me to be solidly real.
I turned it in my
I would
hand.
give it all the sensory vividness
in my
I am
finger.
capable of giving anything. And while I am feeling my imaginary ring, which implies I am married,
Yep.
I would sleep. This story is told us in the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon. It is said, "At night on my bed, I sought him whom my soul loveth. I found him whom my soul loveth, and I would not let him go until I brought him into my mother's house."
Now remember, when I first came on and started commenting, this was like maybe 6 months later, and I said, this isn't working. I don't understand why it's not working. I did everything. They said, you're doing it wrong. I said, I did exactly what he said. They said, well, no, because you're doing it wrong, because this works. Okay. They say, well, this is how you have to do it. I'm like, yeah, I know what he said. I've listened to it multiple times. And they're trying to tell me like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, I understand the English language. This is very clear instructions. This is nothing vague about this. I did all these things.
Right into the chamber of her that conceived me. If I would take that beautiful poem and put it into modern English, into practical language, it would be this. While sitting in my chair, I would feel myself right into the situation of my fulfilled desire. And having felt myself into that state, I would not let it go. I would keep that mood alive. And in that mood, I would sleep. That is, taking it right into my mother's chamber, into the chamber of her that conceived me.
That is very hard to fall asleep in that state.
Unaware
Try it.
of this fantastic power of the imagination. But when man begins to discover this power within him, he never plays the part that he formerly played. He doesn't turn back and become just the reflective life. From here on in, he is the affecter of life. The secret of it is to center your imagination in the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain therein. For in our capacity to live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled lies our capacity to live the more abundant life. Most of us are afraid to imagine ourselves as important and noble individuals, secure in our contribution to the world, just because at the very moment that we start our assumption, reason and our senses deny the truth of our assumption.
That's true.
We seem to be in the grip of an unconscious urge, which makes us cling desperately to the world of familiar things and resist all that threatens to tear us away from our familiar and seemingly safe moorings. But I appeal to you to try it. If you try it, you will discover this great wisdom of the ancients, for they told it to us in their own strange, wonderful, symbolical form.
So I implore you to try it. Just try it. I tried it. Didn't work.
But unfortunately, you and I misinterpreted their stories and took it for history when they intended it as instruction to simply achieve our every objective. You see, imagination puts us inwardly in touch with a world of states. These states are existent. They are present now. But they are mere possibilities while we think of them. But they become overpoweringly real when we think from them and dwell in them. You know, there's a wide difference between thinking of what you want in this world and thinking from what you want. Let me tell you, when I first heard of this strange and wonderful power of the imagination, it was in 1933 in New York City. An old friend of mine taught it to me. He turned to the 14th of John, and this is what he read. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. He explained to me that this central character of the Gospels was human imagination. That mansion was not a place in some heavenly house, but simply my desire.
So Neville Goddard taught that Jesus and or God is literally our imagination. So I got a chuckle because when atheists would say God is a figment of your imagination, I would go close. He is our imagination. I really like this concept because if you think about it, your imagination is all powerful and all knowing. You can't fool, your imagination cannot be fooled by anything you're imagining. You are all powerful in your imagination. There's nothing you can't do. If you think about it, that is true. There is something to that. Also, everything that we have ever made was first imagined. All things that are now made were first imagined, and the Bible says all things were made by him. Without him was not anything made that was made. And so he says, see, that's what God is, your imagination. You had to imagine it before you could make it. But then I said, But doesn't that imply that action follows your imagination? Because then you went about making it. Didn't you take action? And he's saying, don't do that. Keep listening. You'll see what I mean. He's going to say, no, don't take action. Don't do that.
If I would make a living representation of the state desired, and then enter that state and abide in that state, I would realize. At the time, I wanted to make a trip to the island of Barbados in the West Indies, but I had no money. He explained to me that if I would that night, as I slept in New York City, assume that I was sleeping in my earthly father's house in Barbados, and go sound asleep in that state, that I would realize my trip. Well, I took him at his word and tried it. For 1 month, night after night, as I fell asleep, I assumed I was sleeping in my father's home in Barbados. At the end of my month, an invitation from my family came, inviting me to spend the winter in Barbados. I sailed for Barbados the early part of December of that year. From then on, I knew I had found this Savior in myself. The old man told me that it would never fail. Even after it happened, I could hardly believe that it would not have happened anyway. That's how strange this whole thing is. On reflection, it happens so naturally. You begin to feel or to tell yourself, well, it would have happened anyway. And you quickly recover from this wonderful experience of yours. It never failed me if I would give the mood, the imagined mood, sensory vividness. I could tell you unnumbered case histories to show you how it works. But in essence, it's simple.
It's simple.
You simply know what you want.
It's
when
simple.
you know what you want, you're thinking of it. That is not enough. You must now begin to think from it. Well, how could I think from it? I am sitting here, and I desire to be elsewhere. How could I, while sitting here physically, put myself in imagination at a point in space removed from this room and make that real to me? Quite easily.
Quite easily.
My imagination puts me in touch inwardly with that state.
I can go to my dream home anytime I want. Like I said, I've swam in the pool with people. I've experienced the feeling that he talks about. You feel it. The feeling is the secret. I've done all that. It's very easy to imagine. It's very easy. And you can imagine that you're there. And I can even give myself a location. It's not hard to do. That part isn't hard. The hard part is falling asleep. And then the hard part is persisting in that feeling because you can't doubt while you're waiting for it to all fully realize. But I won't interrupt anymore unless I feel there's a reason that I need to say something. I'll just finish this up here.
I imagine that I am actually where I desire to be. Now, can I tell that I am there? There is only one way to prove that I am there. For what a man sees when he describes his world is as he describes it relative to himself. So what the world looks like depends entirely upon where I stand when I make my observation. So if, as I describe my world, it is related to that point in space I imagine that I am occupying, then I must be there.
I did that.
I am not there physically, no. But I am there in my imagination.
Yep.
And my imagination is my real self. And where I go in imagination and make it real, there I shall go in the flesh also. When in that state I fall asleep, it is done. I have never seen it fail. So this is the simple technique on how to use your imagination to realize your every objective. Here is a very healthy and productive exercise for the imagination. Something that you should do daily. Daily relive the day as you wish you had lived it, revising the scenes to make them conform to your ideals.
Okay, he's going to go into other stuff now. Things that you should do, exercises. Well, wait a second. You just said all you have to do is this. And then he goes into this exercise. You can listen to it. There's like 5.5 minutes left or whatever it is, 4.5 minutes. Doesn't matter. So that's the lecture that was going to change my life. And then notice this. I don't even know what's here. Oh, yeah. This has worked for me all the time. People say I'm lucky. It's not that I'm lucky. I'm just aware. 2,700 likes. Really. This has worked for me all the time. And it's simply because he's aware. Neville has a book, I think, called The Power of Awareness. He calls this the law of assumption. If you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, your assumption will harden into fact. It all sounds great. It all sounds fantastic, except it never happened. And when it doesn't happen, you naturally start to doubt. So like I said, this woman this happened to her back in the day when there was no possible way to save her, yet she didn't die. I hope you listen to it. I'd love to hear what you think both of Neville's lecture and of Mary Morrissey's TED Talk. I'm amazed of Mary Morrissey's TED Talk. I was blown away when I heard this because I literally said, can I see proof that this really works? Because right now I'm struggling because nothing was happening. And I had been at this for maybe a month. And I just said, can I just see something? Anything. I don't care what it is. I just need something to show me this really does work. And here she is again, 5 morning habits of successful people. Okay, whatever. So if I assume I'm successful, I'll become successful. Well, great. So there's the TED Talk. It's very inspiring. And it is quite an amazing story. But now I wonder, did she make it up? I don't want to accuse her of that because I really like this lady. She's a very nice person. She does not sound like a salesperson at all. She sounds very genuine, not like one of those guys. There's a guy named Proctor. I don't like him. I've listened to salesmen give you this positive thinking and all that crap. Oh my God, those people are just annoying. Even Tony Robbins annoys me. Just annoys me. I'm not buying what he's selling. Okay, this lady doesn't come across like that at all, and neither did Neville. Neville sounds legit. Who knows? Anyway, did this ever work for any of you? Have any of you fallen asleep in your imagined state, desiring something, and it happened naturally and effortlessly? Because I would love to hear it. Please share. I'm not here to criticize. I want this to work. Why wouldn't I want this to work? Who wouldn't want this to work? If this worked, then this is literally the secret to everything. Jesus said, and I'm paraphrasing, and it's based on translations, whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe that you already have it, and it shall be yours. Eckhart Tolle, if you don't know who that is, look up Eckhart Tolle. He wrote a book called The Power of Now. He quoted that verse and he said, notice that when Jesus said that, he's referring to the present moment. Believe that you already have it. To which I said, yes, but then he said, and it shall be yours, which is the future. And Eckhart Tolle is all about the present moment, that's where all the power is. And I agree with him, but it's also, it shall be yours implies future. It shall be yours, which is also what Neville taught. It will happen. It will harden into fact is one of the words he's used. I've listened to this stuff a ton. I can quote a lot of this stuff. I could probably quote some of Mary. I've listened to this Mary's talk here maybe 4 times in the last 5-6 years. So hope you all check it out. I know this was a long video. Like I said, I'm not going to teach anything differently. I'm not teaching anything. I'm not going to talk about, not going to call anyone out either. So hope that you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'd love to hear from anyone that this worked for. Tell me what happened, how it worked, and what am I missing? Because if I'm missing something, tell me what it is. Because I want this to work just as much as everyone else wants this to work. Why wouldn't I? Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.